In this module, we'll review some common strategies our customers use to design their products. We'll discuss the benefits and drawbacks of each model so that you can choose a strategy that works for you. Let's start with a quick review of products. Products are how developers and their apps access your API proxies and resources. Since this is the exposure level for your resources, it is important that the products are consumer-friendly. Think of your developer portal as a marketplace where your consumers will have access to a catalog of products. The purpose and usage of the products should be intuitive and consistent. Let's walk through some of the strategies to get you there. To understand how you set up products, you need to understand some general strategies around how to group the proxy resources that they represent. We'll highlight 4 common strategies here. Which one you choose often depends on how you want to set up your API program. And remember, your strategy doesn't need to fit into one of these buckets. You may decide to mix and match from these 4 or even change over time as you see how your APIs are being used. We'll start with the API proxy model. The API proxy model is one of the easiest to set up and is a common starting point for customers. You simply create a new product and associate it with each API proxy. You can even select this option from the proxy builder. The product will allow access to all API resources contained within the proxy. The simplicity to set up comes at the expense of flexibility. Since most consumers will be accessing more than one API proxy, they will need access to the product for each. Think about the authentication case. These flows are typically isolated into a single proxy. If you use this model, a developer would need access to the authentication product as well as the product used for each API proxy they are authenticating for. This becomes a further problem when you want to enforce product-level business rules, for example, quota. Let's take a look at another option, the business model. The business model is designed to align business units to API resources through a product. This model allows a business unit to shape the products they want to expose to their consumers. I've seen this model used when a business team takes ownership of the API program and builds their own APIs due to the speed of traditional IT development, or when a business team is driving a specific project with an external vendor who will only consume a product specific to that initiative. The drawbacks of this model come when you have consumers spanning business units. This can lead to inconsistent experiences for your consumer and potential conflicts if multiple business units are exposing the same API resources. Starting with this model and continuing through the remainder, you'll notice that we've started using API resources as the product building blocks to enable flexibility and growth within the product offerings. Now we'll review a similar model, the ownership model. The ownership model looks a lot like the business model, the key difference being the team that drives the product groupings. In this case, they will be grouped by development or operations teams, meaning that each development team will offer products based on the API resources that they own and maintain. As with the business model, this model can be confusing to your consumers in that the development teams may not be familiar with them, so the grouping of resources may not be intuitive, and there can be a lack of consistency cross-team. I've seen this model used successfully when the API consumers are internal. That way, they understand the internal landscape and the way that the development teams are organized. Let's take a look at one of the most popular models, the service plan model. The service plan model centers around the concept that you can give different levels of access to your API resources. This can be built around common factors like trust, in the case of partners, subscription, in the case of monetization, and simplicity of use. This plan provides the most flexibility for future growth, as it is agnostic to changes in organizational or business units and isn't tied to any specific back-end resource. In this model, you rarely, if ever, see any developer app being associated with multiple products, allowing for a simplified and consistent consumer experience. So how do you decide which strategy is best? Start with whichever model makes sense and try not to get overwhelmed and spend extra cycles making a decision. Just get started. Your API program will change over time, and your product strategy will likely evolve and change with it. If you have any questions, please post them in the Apigee community and visit our documentation site for more resources. Thanks.